The exploration ship Aurora's Light drifted quietly through the dark sea of space. It was a vessel built for cooperation, a proud project shared between humans and the Veyari, an alien race known for their elegant features, tall frames, and deep respect for tradition. On board, dozens of officers from both species worked side by side, mapping unknown systems and cataloging life where no one had gone before. Among the crew was Ethan Ward, a young human officer fresh from the academy. He had grown up hearing stories of the stars but never thought he would serve on a ship that carried both humans and aliens together. To him, the Veyari were still a mystery, strange yet fascinating. They spoke with soft voices, moved with graceful calm, and always seemed to hold secrets in the way they smiled. Ethan's assignment came without warning. "Ward," his commanding officer said, sliding a datapad across the console. "You'll be paired with Lyrae of the Veyari. She's one of their lead scientists. You two will take a shuttle to survey the uncharted system ahead. Simple mission: map the moons, scan for resources, and return." Ethan blinked. "With just the two of us?" "That's right. Consider it a chance to learn. You'll represent humanity and she'll represent her people. Don't disappoint." Ethan accepted the datapad, feeling his pulse quicken. He had spoken to Lyrae only a handful of times, always in passing. She was tall even by Veyari standards, her silver hair braided with small beads that glowed faintly, a mark of her scholarly status. Her eyes were pale blue, almost too bright, as if they reflected starlight. She carried herself with calm dignity. Yet when she had looked at him before, he thought he noticed something like quiet curiosity in her gaze. Now he would share a shuttle with her for days. Boarding the shuttle. The next morning, Ethan entered the hangar where the shuttle waited. Its sleek form gleamed under the lights, fitted with both human and Veyari technology. Lyrae was already there, arranging scientific equipment with careful hands. When she turned, Ethan straightened unconsciously. "Officer Ward," she said in her smooth voice. "It seems we are to share this mission." "Yes, ma'am," Ethan replied. Then, unsure if Veyari used the same respect terms, he added quickly, Lyrae." Her lips curved slightly. "Lyrae will do." They boarded the shuttle together. Ethan strapped into the pilot's seat while Lyrae settled beside him with her scanners. The engines hummed to life, and soon they were sailing away from the Aurora's Light, into the unknown system. The stars stretched endlessly before them, trouble on the moon. The first few hours passed without problem. They charted asteroid fields, measured radiation levels, and marked mineral-rich rocks. Lyrae worked with quiet focus, occasionally asking Ethan to adjust their course or record data. But trouble came when they approached the second moon of a gas giant. At first, everything seemed normal, a frozen world with no atmosphere. Yet, just as Ethan prepared to begin orbital scans, alarms blared across the shuttle's console. "Power fluctuation," Ethan muttered, his hands flying over the controls. "One of the engine regulators is failing." Lyrae's voice remained calm, but her eyes narrowed as she studied the readouts. "If the regulator collapses, the entire drive will shut down." Moments later, the shuttle shuddered violently. Systems flickered. "The engine cut. We're going down," Ethan shouted. The shuttle spiraled toward the moon's surface. Ethan fought the controls with all his strength, guiding the craft away from jagged cliffs and into a relatively flat basin. The landing was rough. The shuttle slammed down hard, sliding across the ice before finally screeching to a halt. Silence followed, broken only by the creak of cooling metal. Ethan's heart pounded. "Everyone in one piece?" "I am unhurt," Lyrae replied, unclipping her harness. She glanced at the darkened control panel. "But the shuttle is crippled. We cannot leave until it is repaired." The shelter with power low and systems offline, they had to act fast. Ethan activated the emergency survival shelter, a compact structure folded into the shuttle's hull. Together, he and Lyrae deployed it on the frozen surface. The shelter inflated and hardened into a dome with enough space for 2 people and basic supplies. Inside, the air was warmer, but not by much. The outside temperature was far below freezing, and the shelter's heaters struggled to keep up. Ethan rubbed his hands together, seeing his breath cloud in front of him. "It's going to be a long night." Lyrae, however, did not look worried. She unrolled a thermal blanket and placed it neatly on the narrow cot that lined one wall. Then she turned to Ethan with calm certainty. "In Veyari custom," she said, "when explorers are forced to share shelter, they sleep close together. It is a bond of trust, and it prevents unnecessary loss of warmth. Ethan froze, unsure if he had heard right. You mean, we're supposed to sleep side by side? Her pale eyes studied him. Yes, it is expected. He hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. Humans usually prefer a little more space. Her head tilted, a small smile forming. So I have read. But space will not help you survive this cold. And besides, perhaps you will find the custom not unpleasant. Ethan had no argument. The shelter was small and the temperature continued to drop. With a deep breath, he nodded. All right. Custom it is. First night they lay down on the cot, the blanket drawn over them. At first Ethan kept rigid, his arms stiff at his sides. He could feel the warmth of Lyray's body near his, could hear the soft rhythm of her breathing. After a while she shifted closer, wrapping her arm lightly across his chest. Ethan tensed. Oh, what are you doing? It is part of the custom, she said simply. To hold your companion is to share more warmth. Do not worry, Officer Ward. It does not bind you to anything else, only comfort. Her calmness disarmed him. Slowly, Ethan allowed himself to relax. The warmth spreading from her body was real, steady, and strangely reassuring. Outside, the frozen moon howled with silent winds, but inside the shelter, there was only her steady presence. He thought about what she had said, that among the Veyari, this was not strange but expected. It made him wonder how many other traditions humans still did not understand about their new allies. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Lyray whispered, You are not as restless as I thought humans would be. Ethan gave a small laugh. And you're calmer than I thought an alien scientist would be. Then perhaps we both are surprised. The silence returned, but now it was easier. The cold felt less sharp, and in that small shelter on a desolate moon, a quiet bond began to form, one that would matter far more than either of them yet realized. The frozen moon slept in silence outside their thin shelter, but inside, Ethan and Lyray were wide awake. The heater hummed weakly, trying to push back the cold. But the warmth of their shared blanket and the closeness of their bodies made the real difference. Ethan lay still, staring at the curved ceiling of the shelter, his mind spun with thoughts. Never had he imagined he would be lying so close to an alien, her arm resting lightly across his chest as if it was the most natural thing in the world. He could feel the faint weight of her silver braid against his shoulder, the way her steady breathing matched the rhythm of his own. He reminded himself, this was custom. For her, it was not strange. For her, it was survival. And yet, a small part of him could not ignore how different this moment felt compared to anything he had known before. Morning in the shelter, when he finally drifted into uneasy sleep, Ethan dreamed of stars stretching out forever, and of voices he did not understand. He awoke to the soft sound of movement. Lyray was already up, kneeling by a small scanner she had set on the floor. Pale light from the device cast her features in a calm glow. You're awake, she said without looking up. Ethan pushed himself upright, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, didn't think I'd sleep at all, honestly. You did, she replied, glancing at him briefly. And you did not thrash as much as I expected from a human. That is good. Rest is needed, Ethan gave a dry laugh. I'll take that as a compliment. Her lips curved slightly before she returned her focus to the scanner. The shuttle's power core is damaged, but not beyond repair. We will need to gather certain minerals from the surface to stabilize it. There is also something else. Something else? She turned the scanner toward him. The small screen showed faint lines beneath the ice, like scars etched into the moon itself. Energy signatures, artificial, there may be ruins below us. Ethan leaned closer. Ruins, as in someone used to live here? That is what the data suggests. Her voice grew softer. The Veyari have seen traces of this script before, but never so clearly. If these are ruins, they may belong to an ancient people, perhaps even older than both of our species. Ethan whistled under his breath. Guess our mission just got more interesting. Setting out after a quick meal from the shelter's ration packs, they prepared to venture outside. The environment suit Ethan wore was standard human issue, bulky but reliable. Lyray's suit was sleeker, made of flexible layers that shimmered faintly as if woven with light. When they stepped onto the moon's surface, the world seemed vast and empty. The ice stretched endlessly, glittering under the weak glow of a distant sun, Each breath inside Ethan's helmet fogged slightly before the filters cleared it. Lyrae walked with measured grace, her steps barely disturbing the snow. The mineral deposit lies 2 kilometers west, but I suggest we also follow the energy trail afterward. Fine by me, Ethan said. Lead the way. They moved together across the frozen land, 2 figures small against the white desert. Ethan found the silence eerie, broken only by the crunch of his boots and the faint whisper of Lyrae's suit. Yet even in silence he felt her presence steady beside him, guiding him forward. Conversations on the ice to keep his mind off the cold, Ethan spoke. So, this sleeping custom of yours, do all Veyari explorers do it? Yes, Lyrae replied without hesitation. It is considered dishonorable to refuse. In ancient times, explorers often traveled in pairs across frozen worlds. Sharing warmth was not only survival, it was a promise. You carried each other's life as your own. Ethan nodded slowly. Makes sense, humans, we do similar things in extreme environments. Huddling for warmth, I mean. But we don't usually call it custom. More like necessity. Her pale eyes glanced at him through the helmet visor. Perhaps for us, necessity became tradition. And tradition became identity. Ethan thought about that. Humans had customs too. Saluting officers, celebrating holidays, telling stories around fire. Maybe the Veyari simply carried theirs with more seriousness. After a long pause, he asked, Does that mean, last night you already see me as a companion, by your people's standards? Lyrae walked silently for a few steps before answering. Yes. By Veyari tradition, once warmth is shared, trust is also shared. You are no longer only a fellow officer, you are closer. Her words hung in the frozen air, heavier than the silence that followed. Ethan did not know what to say, so he said nothing. But deep inside, something shifted. A realization that this mission was not just about exploration. It was about bonds neither of them had expected. The mineral hunt. They reached the mineral site after nearly an hour. The deposit jutted out from the ice, a cluster of sharp crystals glowing faintly with inner light. Lyrae scanned them carefully. This will work, she said. We need only a small amount to stabilize the shuttle core. Ethan knelt and began chipping at the crystals with a portable cutter. Shards fell to the ground, glittering like glass. He gathered them into a sealed container, handing it to Lyrae when it was full. As he worked, he noticed her watching him with quiet interest. What? He asked, smiling faintly. You humans, she said softly. You attack problems directly, always with force and determination. It is admirable, Ethan shrugged. Sometimes brute effort is the only way. Guess that's what we're good at. Perhaps, she murmured, but I think it is more than that. You refuse to give up even when logic says you should. He blinked at her, surprised. That sounds like a compliment. It is. Following the energy trail with the minerals secured, they turned their focus to the mysterious energy signals. Lyrae guided them with her scanner, leading Ethan toward a ridge where the ice thinned. There, half buried beneath frost, stood structures. They were tall, jagged spires of stone and metal, worn down by centuries yet unmistakably artificial. Strange markings spiraled across their surfaces, glowing faintly with a light not of the sun. Ethan's breath caught. This is incredible. Lyrae approached slowly, her gloved fingers brushing the carvings. The script? I have seen fragments of it in ancient records, but never whole. These ruins may hold knowledge lost for thousands of years. Ethan walked around the structure, his eyes wide. So we're standing on the doorstep of a civilization nobody even remembers. Yes, she whispered almost reverently. And perhaps it is fate that we found it together. Returning to shelter as the weak sun dipped lower, the temperature dropped further. Reluctantly, they returned to the shelter with their samples and data. Inside, warmth slowly filled the dome. Ethan removed his helmet, exhaling in relief. That was a lot for one day. Yes, Lyrae agreed, placing the mineral container on the table. Tomorrow we will study the ruins more carefully. But tonight we rest. Ethan settled onto the cot again, pulling the blanket around them. Once more Lyrae lay close, her calm presence steady beside him. Ethan, she said softly after a long silence. Yes? In your culture, do you trust easily? He thought for a moment. Not always. Trust usually takes time. You have to earn it. She tilted her head slightly, her braid falling across his chest. Then, do you trust me yet? Ethan met her pale eyes so close in the dim light. He thought about the crash, The long walk across the ice, the way she had spoken about customs and traditions. Finally, he nodded. Yeah, I think I do. Her expression softened and she closed her eyes. Then we are already more alike than different. Outside, the frozen moon remained silent, but inside the shelter, two explorers rested, bound not just by necessity, but by the quiet beginnings of something far deeper. Morning on the frozen moon was almost the same as night. The weak sun rose above the horizon, casting pale light across the endless fields of ice, but it gave little warmth. Inside the shelter, Ethan slowly woke to the faint hum of the heater and the steady presence of Leary beside him. She was already awake, sitting cross-legged near the scanner, her silver braid falling neatly over her shoulder. The glowing device reflected in her pale eyes as she studied the data with calm focus. Ethan rubbed his face and sat up. You're up early. I do not require as much rest as humans, she said without looking away from the screen. And there is much to learn. The signals from the ruins are stronger than I expected. They seem alive. Alive? Ethan frowned, pulling on his boots. You mean like power is still running through them? Yes. She finally turned to face him. And if power flows, then there may still be machines functioning beneath the ice. Perhaps even archives of knowledge. That thought sent a thrill through Ethan's chest. An ancient civilization, forgotten by both humans and Veyari, and yet still whispering from the frozen ground. Then I guess we should go find out, he said. Journey to the ruins. The two explorers suited up again and stepped out into the bitter cold. Their breath misted inside their helmets and the ice crunched underfoot as they walked. The ruins loomed larger the closer they came. Jagged towers jutted from the ground, half buried but still proud against the endless snow. Strange light pulsed faintly from cracks in the stone, as if something deep below still breathed. Leary moved ahead, scanning the structures. Her voice carried over the comm channel. These materials are not natural to this moon. They were carried here, shaped and placed with purpose. Whoever built this was advanced. Ethan ran his gloved hand along one of the spires. The carvings were sharp despite centuries of weather. I don't recognize this language at all. Looks almost like spirals within spirals. It matches fragments recorded in old Veyari archives, Leary said. We always wondered where the fragments came from. Now, perhaps we know. They circled the tallest spire, searching for an entrance. At last Leary found a narrow opening half hidden by ice. Faint light glowed within. This way, she said, her tone quiet but certain. Into the depths. The passage was narrow at first, forcing Ethan to squeeze through, but inside it opened into a vast chamber beneath the ice. Walls of black stone rose high above, carved with symbols that shimmered faintly. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through Ethan's boots. Still active? He whispered. After all this time. Leary's eyes shone as she moved slowly, almost reverently. This is beyond anything we imagined. In the center of the chamber stood a pillar of crystal, taller than both of them, glowing with pale blue light. Strange circuits spiraled around it, pulsing like veins. Ethan whistled softly. Think it's a power source? Or a memory core, Leary murmured. The Veyari once found fragments that suggested a great network of knowledge. If this is one of those, it may hold the stories of an entire civilization. Ethan's heart pounded. Humanity had always dreamed of finding proof of ancient spacefaring people. And now here he was, standing at the heart of their ruins. A sudden tremor as Leary approached the pillar. The ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling and cracks spread across the ice above. Ethan steadied himself against the wall. Is that normal? He asked, voice sharp. No, Leary said quickly, scanning her device. Seismic instability. The energy beneath the surface is waking something. We must be careful. The pillar pulsed brighter as if reacting to their presence. Strange symbols lit up across its surface, spiraling in patterns too complex to follow. Ethan took a step back. It knows we're here. Leary's voice was calm, but her eyes were wide. Yes, it recognizes us. Messages from the past. The pillar's light flared, and suddenly the walls around them shimmered with images. Holograms danced in the air, tall figures made of light speaking in a language neither of them understood. The figures pointed to stars, to ships, to worlds rising and falling. Ethan's jaw dropped. It's history. Their history. Leary's voice trembled with awe. The builders. That is what my people called them in our legends. We thought they were only stories. The images shifted. Wars between great fleets, planets breaking apart, cities burning. Then silence and darkness as the last figures faded into nothing. They destroyed themselves, Ethan whispered. Or were destroyed. Leray added softly. The pillar dimmed again, leaving only the faint glow. The chamber fell silent except for the faint hum. Danger revealed before either could speak further. Another tremor shook the ground, stronger this time. Cracks split the floor, glowing faintly with energy. Ethan grabbed Lyray's arm. We need to get out now. But Leray was staring at her scanner. The core is unstable. The more it awakens, the more it disrupts the crust. If it collapses, the entire basin may fall in. Ethan cursed under his breath. So we found history. And a death trap. Still, Lyray's eyes burned with determination. We cannot leave empty-handed. A fragment, even a small one, could change everything for both our people. Ethan hesitated only a moment before nodding. Fine, but we do it fast. Taking the fragment, they approached the pillar cautiously. Ethan held a portable cutter, while Lyray guided him where to strike. With one careful slice, a shard of glowing crystal broke free, no larger than Ethan's hand. Lyray sealed it in a protective container, her hand steady despite the shaking ground. This will be enough. It holds the language patterns. We can study it later. The floor trembled again, harder this time. Dust rained from above, and a crack split across the chamber, forcing Ethan to leap back. Time's up, he shouted. Let's move. Together they sprinted through the narrow passage, the roar of shifting ice echoing behind them. The ground seemed to groan like a living thing. Escaped to the surface, they burst out into the freezing air just as part of the ridge collapsed behind them. The spires shuddered, some toppling into the snow. The glow beneath the ice flared, then dimmed again, as if retreating into slumber. Breathing hard inside his helmet, Ethan turned to Lyray. That was too close. She held the container tightly to her chest. But worth it. This fragment may hold keys to understanding the builders. We cannot lose it. Ethan shook his head, half smiling despite the danger. You really don't give up, do you? Her pale eyes met his. Neither do you. Back at the shelter inside the safety of the shelter, they finally removed their helmets. Ethan slumped onto the cot, still catching his breath. Well, he said with a weak laugh, that's one way to spend a morning. Lyray placed the container on the table, her expression calm but thoughtful. We saw the rise and fall of an ancient people. We walked in their memory. That is not a small thing. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, but it makes me wonder, if they were so advanced, and they still fell, what chance do we have? Lyray turned to him, her voice steady. The difference is not power, Ethan. It is choice. The builders destroyed themselves because they lost trust. Perhaps our task is to learn from them. Her words settled deep inside him. Trust. That was the bond they had been building since the crash, and maybe, just maybe, that was the true reason they had been paired together. The second night, as the shelter dimmed for night mode, they once again shared the narrow cot. This time, Ethan did not hesitate when Lyray lay close. He wrapped an arm lightly around her shoulders, the gesture feeling natural now outside. The frozen moon groaned with distant tremors, but inside the shelter, there was calm. Lyray's voice was quiet in the darkness. Among my people, when we hold close, it means more than survival. It means strength is shared. If one falls, the other carries them. Ethan listened to her words, his heart steady. Then I guess we're carrying each other now. She closed her eyes, leaning into him. Yes, we are. And as the ancient moon slept beneath them, two explorers, one human, one alien, found themselves bound not only by custom, but by the weight of history and the fragile hope of the future. The frozen moon had gone quiet after the last great tremor, but both Ethan and Lyray knew it was not finished. The ruins they had seen were alive with unstable energy, and the ground itself seemed restless beneath their feet. Inside the shelter, the fragment of crystal pulsed softly in its container, like a heartbeat. Ethan sat staring at it, unable to shake the images the pillar had shown, the rise of a mighty people and their fall into fire. Lyray was calm, as always. She sat across from him, her hands folded on her knees, her eyes reflecting the faint light. You are troubled, she said gently. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. I keep thinking about them, the builders. If they had everything, all that power and knowledge, and they still destroyed themselves. What's stopping us from making the same mistakes? Lyrae tilted her head slightly. Nothing stops us except choice. They chose pride and war. We must choose differently. Her words gave him a strange comfort, but before he could reply, the ground shook again. This time it was not a gentle tremor. It was violent, enough to send both of them sprawling against the walls of the shelter. The lights flickered. Supplies tumbled from shelves. The heater sputtered. Not good, Ethan muttered, already pulling on his boots. We need to check the shuttle, make sure the power core is still stable. Lyrae grabbed her scanner. Yes. If the tremors grow stronger, the basin could collapse entirely. Together they hurried outside. Collapse at the ruins. The air was colder than before, biting even through their suits. As they crossed the icy ridge toward the shuttle, Ethan saw dust rising from the direction of the ruins. Whole spires were cracking, breaking apart under the strain. He slowed, staring. It's falling apart. Lyrae's voice was tight. The energy we awakened, it is destabilizing the crust. Another tremor hit, and the ground beneath them split with a sharp crack. Ethan staggered, arms flailing, but kept his footing. Lyrae was not so lucky. Her leg slipped into the gap. Lyrae. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her by the arms and pulling with all his strength. She came free just as the fissure widened into a deep, glowing scar. They tumbled together into the snow, breathing hard. She pushed herself up, calm but shaken. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Ethan said grimly. We're not safe. The cave-in, they reached the shuttle only to find part of the cliff above it beginning to crumble. Massive chunks of ice and stone rained down, smashing into the ground around them. Move! Ethan shouted, shoving Lyrae forward. They sprinted toward the shelter of a nearby ridge, but the ground buckled again. The last thing Ethan saw was a wall of falling rock. Then everything went black. Trapped. When Ethan woke, his head throbbed. Darkness pressed in on all sides. He tried to move, but found his legs pinned under heavy rubble. His suit's lights flickered weakly, casting dim glow over the jagged stones around him. Lyrae, he croaked, his throat dry. For a moment there was no answer. Panic flared in his chest. Then a faint voice came through his comm. Ethan, I hear you. Relief washed over him. Where are you? Above you, I am safe. But you are trapped. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the strain beneath it. Yeah, he said with a bitter laugh. Feels like half the moon sitting on my legs. I will get you out, she said firmly. Ethan shook his head, though she could not see it. No, listen. If the ground shakes again, you'll be buried too. You should get back to the shelter, though no. Her voice cut sharp. Among the Veyari, once warmth is shared, strength is also shared. You are not alone in this. Ethan closed his eyes, her words sinking deep. Lyrae's effort through the dim glow. He saw her silver figure climbing carefully down the rubble toward him. She carried tools from the shuttle, her scanner and a portable cutter. You shouldn't, he began, but she silenced him with a look. She knelt by the rocks, scanning the debris that pinned him. Your leg is not broken, only trapped. If I cut here and here, she marked the stones with glowing lines. It will be enough. Then she worked. The cutter's beam hissed, slicing through the rock. Each movement was precise, her long fingers steady despite the tremors that still shook the ground now and then. Sweat beaded on her forehead, visible even through the helmet's visor. Ethan tried to joke to hide his fear. You're really stubborn, you know that? Her lips curved faintly. So are you. The rock cracked, shifting slightly. Pain shot through Ethan's leg and he gritted his teeth. Lyrae immediately paused, her hand brushing his arm gently. Breathe. I will not let you be crushed. Her calm voice steadied him. Freedom at a cost finally, with one last cut. The heavy stone split and rolled aside. Ethan gasped as his legs came free. He tried to stand, but pain flared through his muscles and he collapsed again. Easy, Lyrae said, kneeling beside him. She slid her arm under his shoulders and helped him up, supporting most of his weight. Together they staggered toward the shelter. Each step was agony for Ethan, but Lyrae never faltered. She bore his weight as if it was nothing, guiding him with patience and strength. When they finally collapsed inside the shelter, Ethan lay back, exhausted. Lyrae knelt beside him, checking his leg with her scanner. No breaks, she said at last. Only bruising and strain. You will heal. Ethan managed a weak smile. Told you I'm tough. She looked at him, her expression soft. Yes, but toughness alone would not have saved you. It was trust. You trusted me to hold you. Sharing strength that night, the shelter felt different. The ground outside still rumbled faintly, but inside, there was warmth. Not only from the heater or the blanket, but from something stronger. Ethan lay back on the cot, his injured leg stretched carefully. Lyrae lay close beside him as before, but this time she wrapped her arm more firmly across him, holding him as if she feared he might vanish. "You saved my life today," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, we saved each other. That is the way of companions." Ethan thought of her words the night before. If one falls, the other carries them. She had carried him, literally, through the snow and danger, and he realized now that her customs were more than tradition. They were truth. Slowly, he wrapped his arm around her in return. "Then let's keep carrying each other, deal?" Her pale eyes met his, and she gave the faintest smile. Reflection, as Ethan drifted toward sleep. He thought again of the builders, of their great rise and tragic fall. They had lost trust in one another, and it had destroyed them. But here, on a frozen moon far from home, two very different beings had found trust. And maybe that was what made all the difference. Lyrae's breathing was steady against his chest, her warmth a constant reminder that he was not alone. Whatever dangers still waited, he knew one thing for certain. Together they could face them. The first light of dawn crept over the frozen moon, painting the icy plains in shades of pale blue and silver. Ethan stirred, slowly waking, still feeling the stiffness in his leg from yesterday's disaster. Lyrae was already awake beside him, scanning the portable monitor that displayed data from the fragment they had recovered. "You are moving better," she observed calmly. Ethan gave a weak smile. "Yeah, thanks to you. I don't think I could have made it back without your help." Lyrae's pale eyes met his. "We help because it is needed. You would have done the same for me." "That is the law of companions," Ethan nodded slowly. The bond they shared was no longer just a matter of custom. It had become real. Trust, respect, and even something he had not expected: admiration. Preparing the shuttle after a light ration from the shelter's supplies, they began checking the shuttle. The repairs Lyrae had helped with were holding, but the core was still unstable. They worked together carefully, monitoring the fragment's energy readings. Ethan operated the mechanical parts, while Lyrae adjusted the delicate alien circuitry with precise movements. "It should hold for the journey back," she said at last. "But we must leave soon. The moon's crust remains unstable. One strong tremor could bury us again." Ethan secured the fragment in a reinforced container. "Then let's not waste time." As they boarded the shuttle, the icy wind outside howled like a living thing. The landscape seemed beautiful and dangerous at once, a frozen monument to a civilization long gone. Ethan took one last look out the viewport, thinking of the ruins and the ancient builders who had left their secrets beneath the ice. "Do you think anyone will believe what we found?" he asked. Lyrae's voice was quiet but steady. "Perhaps not immediately. But the proof is in your hands. And in mine, launch and turbulence." The shuttle rose slowly from the moon's surface. Frost and dust swirled around them as the engines fired. Ethan's heart raced. He could feel the tension of the past days behind him, the relief of surviving, and the thrill of discovery all at once. "Hold tight," Lyrae said, her hand brushing against his briefly. Her touch was gentle but firm, a silent reminder that he was not alone. As they cleared the atmosphere, tremors shook the moon below. Ethan watched from the viewport as chunks of ice and stone fell into deep fissures, some glowing faintly from residual energy. The ruins they had explored were now buried under shifting layers of the frozen crust. "That was close," Ethan muttered. Lyrae nodded. "We took what we needed. The builder's story will survive because of us." Journey back to the fleet, the journey back to the Aurora's light was long, giving Ethan and Lyrae time to process everything. They sat side by side in the shuttle, quiet at first, watching the stars drift past. Ethan broke the silence. "You know, back on the moon when you held me, I understood what you meant by companions sharing strength. It's more than just physical warmth, isn't it?" Lyrae tilted her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, when companions share strength, they share trust, courage, and hope. That is what keeps us alive, not just the body, but the heart." Ethan looked at her, realizing how much he had come to rely on her, not just for survival, but for guidance, comfort, and even inspiration. I think I've learned more from you in a few days than from all my training at the academy. Lyray's pale eyes softened. And I from you. Humanity has resilience, creativity, and a heart that refuses to give up. That is why your species survives among the stars. The two shared a quiet smile, their bond stronger than ever. Presenting the fragment. When the shuttle finally docked with the Aurora's light, the crew gathered to hear their report. Ethan and Lyray carried the fragment to the lab, carefully setting it on a reinforced stand. It is a memory core from an ancient civilization, Lyray explained. The builders. Their knowledge is encoded in this crystal, waiting for those who understand it to unlock it. The human officers stared in awe, while the Veyari scientists examined the readings with intense curiosity. Among the crowd, Ethan could feel the weight of responsibility and pride. They had discovered something monumental, and they had survived against impossible odds. The commanding officer, a stern human woman, stepped forward. You two faced dangerous conditions and came back with evidence that will change everything. Excellent work. Ethan nodded, glancing at Lyray. She gave a small smile in return. You both are a fine example of cooperation between our species, the officer continued. Let this mission be remembered. Reflection in private. After the presentation, the two slipped away from the crowd, walking through the quiet corridors of the ship. Ethan leaned against the rail, looking out at the stars. Funny, he said. I never imagined I'd be standing here, holding hands with a Veyari, sharing stories and surviving a collapsing moon. Lyray's lips curved faintly. Life is full of surprises. Sometimes they are dangerous. Sometimes they are precious. Ethan turned to her. You saved my life, Lyray. I owe you everything. She shook her head gently. We saved each other. That is all that matters. He smiled, feeling the truth of her words. Trust, courage, and friendship. They were stronger than any power source, stronger than any civilization's knowledge. A new understanding over the next few days. Ethan and Lyray worked together in the lab to study the fragment. It was painstaking, but they made progress, slowly decoding symbols and patterns. What amazes me, Ethan said one evening, is how advanced they were. They could manipulate energy, store information, and yet they still fell. Pride, fear, or conflict, it destroyed them. Lyray nodded. It is a lesson for both our peoples. Knowledge without wisdom can be dangerous. We must remember trust and cooperation, or we risk repeating history. Ethan looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. Then maybe we're the ones who get it right. Humans and Veyari together. Together, Lyray agreed. A quiet moment. One evening, as the ship sailed past a distant nebula, Ethan and Lyray sat side by side in the observation deck. The stars glowed in brilliant blues and purples reflected in the viewport. Do you remember the first night on the moon? Ethan asked. Lyray smiled faintly. Yes. When you hesitated and I explained the custom of sleeping close. You were nervous. Ethan laughed quietly. I thought it was strange, but now I understand. And not just the custom. I understand what it means to trust someone completely. Lyray's pale eyes met his, full of quiet warmth. And I understand humans better now. You value connection as much as survival. That is why you endure. They shared a quiet moment, the stars stretching endlessly before them. In that instant, Ethan knew this mission would be remembered not only for the discovery of the builders, but for the bond it had forged between two very different beings. The final lesson as the Aurora's light continued toward its next mission. Ethan thought back to the frozen moon, the collapsing ruins, and the warmth of Lyray's presence beside him. He realized that humans were special, not only for their courage, creativity, and endurance, but for their ability to form connections across the stars, to trust and to share strength. Lyray, sensing his thoughts, reached out and placed her hand lightly on his. You carry more than strength, Ethan, you carry hope. That is what makes humans remarkable. He smiled, feeling the weight of her words. The bond they shared, born of danger and trust, was stronger than any obstacle they would face. Together they had survived, learned, and grown. Outside, the stars continued their silent journey. Inside, two companions, human and Veyari, sat quietly, ready to face whatever the galaxy might bring. And for the first time, Ethan knew that the future was not just about survival. It was about connection, courage, and the power of trust. And that, he realized, was a discovery more important than any ancient secret buried beneath a frozen moon.